And back to your regularly unscheduled nonprofit programming. For real though, this is coming out a bit of left field as I for one have never played State of Emergency. Thank a member of the inner circle for this one as he brought it up, and it did bring back hazy memories of seeing the box art cover and wondering what went on in it, but because younger Noah wasn't allowed to play M-rated games, hell, he even had to scoot around T-rated games, my brother the rat preventing me from experiencing Tales of Symphonia due to a swear word. It stayed in the back of my brain mind until now. My only reference points are the follows. The box art, which I can hold in the same vein as Killer 7, as both were games that fascinated my adolescent brain. Damn you, Cybernet, for showcasing Killer 7, and Blonde Guy Gamer's video on the sequel, which I remember with foggy accuracy that it wasn't good. The game, not the video. As such, I'm erring on the side of caution with the disclaimer card and the whole revolution theme the game has, because while I'm writing this, I've only checked out the first level. This may change after recording, so hey, here's a sneak peek into how the sausage is made. I seem to be treading down a path that I've already followed. Much akin to Manhunt, State of Emergency was born out of the reaction that violent video games caused violence. I say this because both games were released within a year of each other, Emergency in 2002 on the PlayStation, Manhunt in 2003 for the same console. Hell, the Xbox port of State came out in 2003. Tying these two games together is essentially Rockstar's statement on the criticism against GTA. In fact, you could probably make the argument that State of Emergency was the budget version of Manhunt, just with less horror vibes and more cartoony violence, with the likes of rocket launchers and flamethrowers being the norm. A CBR article posits this idea with the following. Many people believe Rockstar released State of Emergency just to give the finger to video game censorship. At this point, video games were still being viewed as children's toys, even though many adults enjoyed them as well. A lot of mature-rated titles found themselves entrenched in controversy for including adult-oriented content. It seems that, after dealing with so much outrage surrounding the GTA games, Rockstar got tired of it and decided to make State of Emergency to intentionally provoke its critics. Of course, what the article fails to point out is that Rockstar didn't develop State. Instead, in the developer's seat was Viz Entertainment. Viz is slightly interesting in the budget developer sphere for a few reasons, one of them because of what happened after their demise and their strained relationship with BAM. Before I get to that though, the Scottish developer came to be because of one Chris Vander Kool and a few associates. As he details in an interview with Games Industry Biz, so I founded Viz with a couple of guys who were leaving DMA at the time, plus a couple of non-industry techie people, and some from other creative media sectors as well. The short history is that it grew up to 200 odd people in Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, the Isle of Wight, and then sold it to BAM. Basically, like with other small-time developers, Viz was formed out of people not within the industry. That isn't to say that those without experience can't succeed, but there are more pitfalls one has to worry about. On the surface, it looked like smooth sailing for Viz from the years of 98 to 02, with many of their games coming from pre-existing licenses like the Powerpuff Girls, Chemical Extraction, and Relish Rampage, Tom and Jerry, Fists of Fury, and War of the Whiskers, and Earthworm Jim, the abomination that is Earthworm Jim 3D, with 2003 the accursed year when the company went into decline after they acquired a studio from BAM Entertainment, but no. Behind the scenes, Viz was struggling financially. Taken from Games Industry Biz, Viz is facing a cash flow crisis, as despite posting a significant profit last year following the success of State of Emergency on the PlayStation 2, the company has had to pay back significant amounts to investors and now has insufficient cash to finish projects such as the currently unsigned State of Emergency 2. It was so bad that the company had to close their Isle of Wight studio, many employees only learning that they were unemployed when they saw the building under lock and chain, and the one they acquired from BAM. Another quote from Chris states that a series of delays and cancellations to the studio's forthcoming projects have forced this decision upon the Viz management team. The studio will close upon completion of its current works in progress. What did we get out of that? Oh, you know, 2005's Narc.
Partly because I wrongly remembered it coming out to a critical panning. I can't say where I saw it, but I swear I read one magazine say Narc would go down in history as one of gaming's worst. So I've always been a little bit curious why no one ever talked about it. Well, it turns out its reception wasn't a massacre, just middling. And when I booted it up for myself and showed it to a couple different groups of friends, we were actually loving it. Police! Tutorial, soften me up a bit.
Buy me flowers. Take me out to dinner.
Oh, sick. I can do throws.
Throw me into the car, man.
Whoa!
Snakera has an excellent essay on that of the era train wreck, but to get back to the narrative, BAM comes back into the picture as they acquired the remains of Viz for $7 million, mostly because they were under threat of being delisted from the Nasdaq. Again. From GIB, this may be the clearest indicator of why BAM is keen to pursue this deal, as well as giving the company a potentially strong-selling title for its currently relatively unimpressive portfolio in the form of State of Emergency 2. It may also give it the boost needed to send its share price past the $1 mark, and thus avoid being delisted from the Nasdaq. This is where things get fucky, as though Chris and a few others were supposed to join BAM, literally everything fell to shit. Viz went into administration before collapsing after the deal, and BAM, despite acquiring Viz, was still delisted as it was too little too late, forcing the company into bankruptcy like their last partner, Acclaim. When the assets of the company were sold off, which included the State of Emergency brand and the subsidiary studio set up by Viz, DC Studios picked up the torch for SOE2. Mark Greenshields, chief executive of the developer, told the Scotsman that the game is an excellent addition to the company's lineup, and we look forward to it being a huge success and to the continuation of the brand in the future. We are also delighted to be supporting games development within Scotland. A year after SOE2 saw release in 2006, DC Studios rebranded as Firebrand Games. All previous offices and employees closed and laid off. Ain't that a wet fart of a finish? If anything, I can at least say that the publisher of SOE2, South Peak Games, didn't get off lightly either, plastering their name on the Eurogink Classic 2 worlds. With the game locked to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, I booted up PCS X2. The story, if you can call it that, is set in the not-too-distant future. Society has collapsed, leading to an entity called the Corporation to take over and essentially suffocate everyone under its boot, as all good evil corporations do. Not enjoying the life of licking the crusted bottoms of fat cats and shills, the guerrilla group Freedom has risen up to fight for the concept. As both sides start making moves, the Corporation cracking down on resistance, while Freedom convinces others to join their ranks, chaos spills out into the streets and leads into a state of emergency. Amidst the rioting and looting, Freedom enacts their desperate plan to overthrow the corporation, which, judging by the fact that this game has a sequel, didn't pan out. I would know, as I didn't finish the aptly named Revolution mode for reasons I will explain in bad. This story is also so lightweight that it would barely fill a barroom napkin, so you aren't missing out on much. State of Emergency is an interesting case in the presentation angle, as while the game can be considered carbon dated, at the time it was a bit impressive due to the huge amount of NPCs that can be in a level. Like, yes, they are Dreamcast people not at a place within one of the SmackDown vs. Raw games, but while the fans in the stands had short animation loops and had little interaction during gameplay, here you constantly see NPCs running about causing all sorts of mayhem, such as looting, or really driving home how chaotic the State of Emergency is.
Kill.
There are no rules and everyone is rioting, so having huge crowds gallivanting about sells that pretty well. They also add to the sense that what you are doing is somewhat covert. I mean that in the way of you can run past the crowds while being chased, losing your pursuers because they are getting stifled by the gormless mass of people.
Penalty on civilian kills.
However, I did say a bit impressive, and that's because State of Emergency, outside of its solid art direction, a blend of soulless 50s advertising akin to RoboCop, and a cartoonish character style that plays up the violence, it isn't the best looking game on the PlayStation 2. Textures are somewhat dull, and storefronts, when they aren't playing to the art direction, are lifeless and not in the manner that would pertain to the fact that everyone is owned by the corporation. I mean in that dull fashion that looks like a graphic designer banged it out in 10 minutes before the deadline. What is this? The graphics for Fall Brawl?
Smash windows for bonus score. Stage complete. Penalty on civilian kill. Objective complete. Stage complete.
That said, the characters, mostly the player-controlled ones and the enemy NPCs, do stand out against the backdrops. It's not every day you get to rampage through a mall dressed in a Hawaiian shirt, and it's fairly obvious that Spanky is the star of the show. On the flip side, each gang has their own personality, with the gangly mall rats, and the corporation has dressed its units to the nines in all black, emphasizing their threatening aura. It helps to separate them from the crowds, as again, they are huge. The character models are also well animated enough, each one having their own flair during combat. Spanky, befitting his gangster aesthetic, fires pistols and Uzis sideways, while Mac uses trigger discipline, seeing as he was once a cop. Everyone's grab attack is also different, ranging from martial prowess to brute strength, and while the NPC animations are on the simpler side, we do have Oscar tier death animations for just about everyone. Gun down a goon with an automatic, their body twitches randomly from each bullet wound. Use a shotgun up close, heads pop off with gibs. Burninating the countryside, people rush about unable to put out the flames. There is some thought and care put into how the characters animate within the game space, which is heads and shoulders above a lot of budget tier titles. What this does mean though is that the sound and music are pretty stock. None of the music grabs your ears and is generic biddle that, while keeping to the tone of SOE, isn't memorable in the slightest. All the guns and hit sound effects sound like they should, but that is all I can say about the matter. Voice work is minimal, the only amounts of it you get are from the random PA messages, the newscaster, and when you select a character. There isn't enough for me to really comment on any of it, though like with the other aspects related to sound, it is on the budget side of things.
And the global economic crisis, the corporation has been building a brighter future for its citizens. Based on principles of order, loyalty, and civic obedience, the corporation has created a nation that all citizens can feel proud of. For the whole family. And remember, Friday is Double Ration Day at Rocket Burger, where your corporation food vouchers are worth double points. So blast off to Rocket Burger.
Meanwhile, the police have imposed a citywide lockdown on areas of capital cities as riot control units
If you
are
suspect
dispatched.
someone with illegal
Please
activity
obey the
or
curfew.
radical symptoms, please call our 24-hour hotline. Hold it right there!
State of Emergency is a third-person action brawler shooter with two advertised modes of play, Chaos, which is combo attack, and Revolution, which is story mode. To kick off, State of Emergency has a weird curve in terms of difficulty, mostly because not only is it dependent on mode, but it varies even within them. Chaos is on the easier side unless you get poor weapon spawns, though Corporation HQ is on the harder side. Meanwhile, the task-based nature of Revolution means the curve winds up looking like a sine graph with peaks and troughs throughout. This lopsidedness plagues Revolution with the air of tedium, something that the longer level structure of the mode calls to the forefront. Since I've started diving into Revolution, I'll go over it first. Though this isn't the mode that the game automatically selects when you first boot it up, it is the story mode. Kinda. In the words of OSW, it's a bit messy, a bit Pele. As such, you only unlock new levels when you beat one, with there being a total of 4. Kaos has the same 4, but the unlocking requirement is different, as I will explain later. Before beginning either mode, you select your character, which is basically cosmetic, as all play the same. As such, I mostly played Spanky, as he is the mascot of the game, and well, he has the most personality. Big Bang of Lie, Cheat, Steal Eddie Guerrero, which is a massive positive in my books. Then you choose your stage. For Revolution, you are plopped into your level of choice, a massive sprawling complex filled to the brim of NPCs looting about and corpo goons and rival gang members, and must fulfill a list of missions, usually ending with kicking the corporation out of the area. While you are free to do any mission in any order that you choose, you will have to do all of them to complete a level. As such, hitting pause pulls up your completion progress, a little reminder of how slow you will actually finish an area. To give up the ghost, stages in Revolution last around 2 hours, far overstaying their welcome, but more on that later. Missions typically range from enemy hunting, escorts, or property damage, with failure ending with you having to restart your selected mission or choosing a new one. Dying is quite generous, as it's the same as restarting a mission. Quitting out of Revolution means that when you load back in, you'll be right where you left off. Usually when you start a mission, the game might provide you a weapon, but if that isn't the case, procure on site is the way to go, as most enemies carry around a piece, whether melee or ranged. Chaos mode, on the other hand, has weapon spawns, and that's because the game mode is centered around racking up a big score by either destroying buildings, cars, objects, or by killing foes. While the main mode is Chaos, there are also 5 other modifiers, they being 3-minute timed, 5-minute timed, last clone standing, timed last clone standing, and unlimited time. 3, 5, and unlimited are pretty self-explanatory, while last clone standing has you kill 200 enemies in an area in the fastest way possible, while timed last clone is the same, only on a time limit. Now, to unlock new levels and these other modes, you have to reach certain scores in previous ones, such as scoring high enough in 3 or 5 to unlock Time, Last Clone, and Unlimited. Chaos mode itself can be considered pseudo-unlimited, and that's because you can earn time by either hitting certain score thresholds or by picking up clocks for extra time. Doing any of the above I listed out gives you points, but sometimes the game will multiply certain point values, such as more points from destroyed buildings or on corpo or gang kills. That's how you get big high scores on unlock new modes. Objectives can also show up, granting you even bigger payouts, doubly so when they have the multiplier and recovering your health. Do mind though that killing civvies penalizes your score. Dying or running out of time in any Chaos mode ends the run, so be mindful of health pickups, either free floating or dropped by enemies, or quickly score as reaching a gate does refill a portion of your health. All that is left is the controls. Each character has access to the same move pool, that being a standard set of combo attacks. No joke, there is a combo system in this game. A grab that is the best melee attack in the game, a knockdown move that is only useful when enemies are piling onto you, a short dash for chasing after targets or escaping foes, and the ability to pick up and drop weapons or throwable objects. When you don't have a weapon, going full on hardcore wrestling style is the way to go, as while you can throw trash cans and benches, they can be swung around for big damage. Weapons themselves are split into 2 categories, melee and ranged. Melee weapons aren't the best, as while they do more damage than your fists, grabbing is still a better option, as are the throwable objects, and there is no lock-on. Your character will attack whoever is the closest target that they are facing. Yes, that does mean they will attack a dead body if it is the closest. Granted, this is the same for when an enemy is knocked down, so be mindful of who is dead and who is alive. Guns are the better option, but you have to contend with ammo mounts, as ammo pickups don't exist, accuracy ranges, and the lack of a hard lock-on. You can focus the camera behind your character to make firing easier, as well as allowing you to strafe, but that does mean cutting off your camera control. You either free aim or focus fire, no in between. Guns are your standard affair: pistols, shotguns, automatics, but there do exist throwables like the Molotovs and grenades, launchers for tear gas, grenades, and rockets, a minigun, a flamethrower, a taser, and pepper spray. Out of all of them, the most important are the rockets, grenades in their launcher, and Molotovs, as all can destroy buildings either by angling a throw or shot into a window or by a direct hit. One thing that isn't directly told you is that the game does have cheats accessed by hitting a button combination during gameplay. These range from infinite ammo to invulnerability, and for Chaos I didn't use them, but Revolution is a different story. Chaos Mode is a combination of a bloody fun stress ball and challenging display of on-the-fly comboing. While the mode is simple to pick up, performing well is a mixture of learning level layout, optimizing multipliers, and a bit of luck. It helps that each stage has its own feel and difficulty. The mall is a perfect staging point for getting you started into Chaos, as everywhere you look, there are storefronts, windows, and objects to destroy. While the crowds are at their most compact within the mall, this does teach the player about handling them. Sometimes you need a more delicate hand to snuff out corpos or gangs, and having a stray bullet bite a civilian gives you a taste of the penalty system. And while the mall is packed to the gills, there are side rooms where no civvies wander into, providing a perfect space to deal with any enemies wanting to quell your combos. That's not all, however, as the mall does teach exploration, as some bonus objectives like the cars can only be found in certain areas. It teaches you to always stay mobile, as you never know when a multiplier will be active. Chinatown isn't a step up in difficulty, but it might be the funnest level in all of Chaos Mode solely because everywhere you look is points. Crowds are at a minimum on the streets, allowing you to flex with the rocket and grenade launcher. It is a cut-loose level, as not even corpos or gangs can stop you, as you have the entire street to gun them down with no fear of casualty. If anything, I can say that Chinatown teaches you how to loop levels, adding to the lesson that the mall taught about always staying mobile. Some weapons always spawn in certain locations like the rocket and grenade launchers, so always looping around can see you score an easy payout with building and car destruction. The tight corridors of the east side is where the challenge does ramp up, mostly because it is all about dealing with huge swaths of threats. While the mall and Chinatown allowed you to escape your foes by losing them amongst the crowds, or by putting distance between you and them, there is no such luck in the east side. Run as much as you want, you ain't shaking 50 goons on your tail. However, leading a large group of baddies is the next lesson the game teaches you, as once a gang or corpo multiplier pops up, that mob following your every step becomes the biggest cash cow imaginable. Accidentally hitting pedestrians doesn't matter when you are far outscoring the penalty. And even if you don't have a gun or weapon of any sort, the grab is your best friend. Grab chains are a legitimate strategy to take advantage of whole swaths of dudes, as they can't interrupt it and it's a one-hit kill. Wrapping up all of this is the Corporation HQ. The hardest level in the game, it tests your mettle on everything you've learned, as each sector specializes in a certain multiplier. Cars only appear in one area, while most objects line another. If you don't implement everything you've come to learn from the previous levels, there is no way you'll be able to reach the score you need for the stage to complete it. While I beat the rest of the levels in one try, it took me two for Corporate HQ, as it does have a different flow compared to the other stages. This understanding bleeds into the other Chaos modes, as while you earn time in the regular mode, you have to be on point for the set time modifiers. Each tiny screw-up hurts much more, and learning how certain weapons work becomes a must. Grenades and Molotovs are thrown in a weird arc that takes time to recognize, as it is easy to botch a throw into a building's window. Through multiple runs do you learn the strengths and quirks of every weapon and which pitfalls to avoid. For as awesome as it is to use a flamethrower on people, a traditional gun kills faster. Throwables and launchers are better used on objects than people, etc., etc. By the time you grasp onto the mechanics of Chaos, weapon switching and maximizing points is like second nature, providing the analysis I did at the top of the section. There is little stress outside of wanting to keep the anarchy going, as getting cornered does lead to hairy situations. Foes can knock you down, leading to a weapon drop which can be annoying to recover from, thus dealing with foes in the here and now avoids that plight, but corpos or gangs might not have a multiplier. Free-flowing is the best description for Chaos, as while you can think long and hard about it like I have, you can just go with the flow, unlike a certain other mode. Revolution mode. Just Revolution mode. Literally everything great about Chaos mode gets flipped on its head for Revolution, as now instead of stringing combos together and the controls somewhat loose feel not hindering that, you get to fulfill bland missions that range from escort to destruction with the barest of mission descriptions I've ever read and the most horrendous clashing of controls I've ever had to deal with. For a quantifier, I'd much rather play through Manhunt again than complete Revolution mode. It's that bad. But you're here for specifics, and well, I aim to please. Sorry, member of the inner circle who recommended this, cause I'm going to be quite unnice for the moment. What grinds my gears right down to the core is the abundance of escort quests. It feels that about 50% of the missions you engage with in Revolution are these types, and by God, the AI for every escort is set to brain dead, while every enemy beelines towards them in a frantic display of bloodlust. State of Emergency's strong suit is the sense of chaos it has. You don't need to have perfect aim because most of the time what you're aiming at is the vague area in front of you. When a horde of baddies start dogpiling one unit that you have to protect, does the looseness of combat really bite you in the ass because not being able to quickly target a foe leads to mission failure, and that's only with melee. Which, might I add, is practically useless in all escort scenarios, as the amount of mobs thrown at the player doesn't allow for the methodical approach if both sides are on even ground. If corpos or gangs come at your escort with guns or special units, prepare for a reaming of the highest order as they easily snuff out your partner, forcing a restart. This aspect doesn't change when armed with a projectile weapon, as joining the fight against you now is the awkward aiming controls, friendly fire, and ammo. There is no traditional aiming reticle in State, which is fine for Chaos, as most everything is a target, and while killing civilians penalizes your score, it's easy enough to not mow down the crowds. When you are having to dance around shooting your escort accidentally while making sure no one slips behind you, otherwise you have to wrestle with the camera, is a real struggle that you will become well acquainted with on a regular basis. Instead of being gung-ho with your armament of choice, you're forced to deny precision that this game can't handle, as running out of ammo when protecting someone might as well be its own failure state. All of this and more is conducive to the stationary guarding escorts, but if you have to actually facilitate what that word means, every stray enemy is a road bump from A to B, as the AI doesn't understand the idea of live to fight another day. They will willingly stand in place to pick off enemies when that is about the worst idea to implement. To round out this whinging about escorts, for some you have to have clairvoyance to know that a trap will be set up beforehand. The first Mad Bomber mission requires you to guide a doctor to a safe house, but right before you get to it, State spawns in a Mad Bomber that will catch you off guard not only your first time, but if you don't take the correct route. Choosing to not forgo the route head-on means the bomber will approach from an angle you can't see him until it's too late. It is also these enemies that wind up frustrating a few mission types, as you can't kill them with melee attacks, adding to the extra dilemma of rationing ammo. The exact opposite of what this game wants to promote with its design philosophy on mass destruction. There are also the chase missions where you have to track down a number of fleeing targets that really demonstrate how poor the controls are for anything with finesse. You can be running in circles at times during these objectives because the targets are so slippery and you bog down with bumbling. Now, all of these would be bad in a game, but I could overlook the annoyance if it weren't for the nail in the coffin for Revolution mode. It's fucking length. State of Emergency is only 4 levels, but damn is the pacing in each set to heat death of the universe. Hitting start shows you the completion percentage of a level when you're in one, which reveals how little each mission progresses the bar. Doing one mission gives you about 2%. Now, I'm bad at math, but the numbers don't lie. They spell disaster for you in State of Emergency. It might be some of the worst pacing I've had the displeasure of sitting through, as about a fourth of the way through the mall, I realized how little I had actually accomplished. Repetition is at an all-time high within Revolution, and I began to drift out of my consciousness when I wasn't dumbfounded by the many ways I failed. It left me with thoughts of, is this Revolution worthwhile when I've killed more civilians through accomplishing my tasks and sheer boredom than the corporation? That's exactly what you want your players to think in your destructible sandbox game, right? My only positives for Revolution is that it is generous on the checkpoints and that cheats exist such as infinite ammo. This doesn't alleviate the problems, that's a band-aid on a bullet wound. It only exacerbates the issues because you see how truly asinine the mission structure is, how unbalanced the escort quests are, and how broken the AI is. Do yourself a favor, if you want to unlock all the characters, just use cheats. State of Emergency is honestly a game of two halves. Chaos Mode's breakneck pace is a load of fun as you can sink into the mindless action and spectacle of causing mayhem. On the flip side, Revolution's plotting nature and laser focus on alternate objectives showcases how poor these controls are for anything other than racking up combos. For my word, stick to Chaos, but if you're going to play Revolution, the infinite ammo cheat is your best friend. It's so weird that back-to-back I have games that offered the same kind of design philosophy, but take it in different ways. Seriously, my full playtime for Munchables was around 4 hours, while the first level of Revolution mode took me 2. That's some odd time imbalance if I ever saw one, and playing through the mall felt like a painful eternity. I'm also beginning to wonder if this is the curse of non-Red Dead and GTA games, including Bully, from and published by Rockstar. Manhunt's back half is a mess of third-person shooting, SOE has the tedious Revolution mode, and though I enjoy Max Payne 3, of the three it is the weakest in terms of gameplay compared to 1 and 2. Perhaps I should test out the Warriors on my own time and see if it doesn't fit the mold. Or I could play Earthworm Jim 3D for some serious shit. For real though, I apologize in advance to the Inner Circle member who recommended this to me, as I wasn't expecting to be so vehemently opposed to Revolution mode. With that said, this showing of State of Emergency is over, but stay tuned for our next feature involving furry thieves, a long-running game of cops and robbers, and a developer's big break into the industry.